You'd hardly know it from watching the mainstream media, but lately food riots have been breaking out on nearly every continent, a perfect storm of poverty and prosperity and probably climate change. Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Tonight we'll hear the scope of the hunger emergency from the UN and zero in on Haiti. Also tonight, students who care, meaningful alternatives to spring break on the beach, and the downside of free admission to the online tent.
These are huge, profitable companies that make billions of dollars, and yet they do so. Their entire business model is built around giving things away free to the consumer.
But hey, why is that bad? We'll explain later. But first, here are this week's online video picks. Number one, the Bronx goes viral. Students at the Bronx High School for Performance and Stagecraft wrote their own versions of Barack Obama's Yes We Can speech. The campaign got wind of it and came in to record the students. The video you're about to see wound up on an Obama fundraising site before it went viral online. You will see some students and their teacher, Jackson Schaefer.
This is the Bronx High School for Performance and Stagecraft in the South Bronx in New York City. It's largely African American and Latino. We also have some Asian students, some Indian students. It's a tough neighborhood. We're located in a really tough area of the Bronx, and most of the kids face challenges at home, challenges in their living environment. And we have a lot of kids who come here with emotional disturbances, with educational interruptions, and a lot of immigrant students. I have fought since the beginning of my teaching here 3 years ago to take on the issue of race. The first time I heard an African American student talking intelligently about a text, a bunch of kids yelled, "Oh, why are you talking white? Why do you sound white?" And this blew my mind, and we just stopped, and I said, so only white people can speak articulately about a text, because I don't believe that to be true. And we talked about it. We started talking about what our expectations for race is, what happens, and in the classroom people break it down.
He makes me care, and he makes me want to believe, and he makes me want to get up and go and do something with my life and go out there and make a difference.
Okay, just I can inspire me a lot because I don't know too much English, but when I heard just I can, that 3 words inspire me that I can learn English. I can learn how to write. I can learn how to talk. And now I'm here, so.
That's great, isn't it? Just one problem for the students and Mr. Schaefer, however. Chancellor Joel Klein says Obama's people, recording the students, ran afoul of the no filming on school property for political purposes rule. Write that on the board 100 times, Bart Simpson. I will not... Never mind. Video pick number 2. You don't get many apologies out of presidential candidates, right? But sometimes you gotta stand out there in the rain and take it.
We can be slow as well to give greatness its due. A mistake I myself made long ago. When I voted against a federal holiday in memory of Dr. King. I was wrong.
We all make mistakes.
I was wrong and eventually realized that in time to give full support for a state holiday in my home state of Arizona. I'd remind you that we can all be a little late sometimes in doing the right thing. And Dr. King understood this about his fellow Americans. But he knew as well in the long term, confidence in the reasonability and good heart of America is always well placed. And always that was his method in word and action to remind us of who we are and what we believe.
That apology from Senator John McCain came last Friday, the 40th anniversary of the King assassination. By the way, it's not just Clinton and Obama left in the Democratic race. Beatles fans, brace yourselves.
When I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide. I stop and turn and I go for a ride until I get to the bottom. see you again. Yeah. Do you, don't you want me to love you? I'm coming down fast, but I'm miles above you. Tell me the answer. You may be a lover, but you ain't no dancer. Go, helter skelter. Helter skelter. Helter skelter. Woo!
Lunchtime, USA.
Yes, it was the Beatles' Helter Skelter, and yes, Mike Gravel never dropped out of the race. In fact, rumor has it he may yet run on the Libertarian Party ticket in November. Online video pick number 4 from a website called The Real Weekly News. Blame our troubles not on subprime greed, but going off the gold standard.
Since the Fed's creation, we've been slowly going off the gold standard, until finally, on August 15, 1971, President Nixon, one of the worst presidents in our country's short history, announced the United States would no longer redeem U.S. currency for gold. And this was the final step in abandoning the gold standard. What is important is to visually see the devaluation of the U.S. dollar since we were taken off the gold standard. Keep in mind, the price of gold really doesn't go up or move, it has historical value. It is extremely consistent. So instead of seeing this as the price of gold going up, you need to see this as the value of the dollar dropping like a rock. The price of gold has been flying right now. It has recently been as high as $1,030 an ounce, all the way down to $870 an ounce. And what I find most interesting is if you want to buy a brand new Corvette convertible in 2008, it would cost roughly $55,000. So in gold, that'd be roughly 60 ounces of gold at the spot price of $930 per ounce. So at the time when gold was $930, you could basically take 60 1-ounce gold coins, cash them in, and buy that very same car. Inversely, if you remove inflation and the devaluation of the dollar, as if the U.S. currency was still attached to the gold standard, as it was originally intended when this country was founded, that same car being bought with the same 60 ounces of gold would have a gold standard value of only $1,200, or the same 60 $20 1-ounce double eagles. So if that car price today is $55,000 and the gold standard value is $1,200, this means that we're sitting on roughly $53,800 inflation over the last 100 years for a $1,200 item.
Now, I am pleased to say we don't have time for the entire lesson, but you get the idea, or not. But if that didn't make you an expert on today's financial crisis, video pick number 5 from the Long Johns definitely will.
During this summer, there have been actual causes behind the volatility in the markets, haven't there? I mean, specifically and especially in America, granting vast numbers of mortgages to people who can't afford them on properties which are diminishing in value.
It's the so-called subprime situation, yes, the subprime market.
Yes. How does that work, in fact?
Well, imagine, if you can, say, an unemployed black man sitting on a crumbling porch somewhere in Alabama in his string vest, and a chap comes along and said, would you like to buy this house before it falls down? And why do you let me lend you the money?
And is this chap who says this, is he a banker?
Oh, no. He's a mortgage salesman. His income depends entirely on the number of mortgages that he can arrange.
So his judgment to arrange mortgages is completely objective? Completely objective, yes, absolutely. Good. Yes. And what happens next?
Well, then this debt, this mortgage, is taken, bought by a bank and packaged together on Wall Street with a lot of other similar debts.
Without going into much detail about what is actually...
Without going into any detail, no, it's far too boring. And so this is put into a package of debt, and then it's moved on to Wall Street, and this is extraordinary what happens then, that somehow this package of dodgy debts stops being a package of dodgy debts and starts being what we call a structured investment vehicle.
And SIV?
An SIV, exactly, yes.
Yes, I see. And then someone like you comes along and buys it.
I buy it, yes, and
Yes.
then I will ring up, I don't know, somebody in Tokyo and say, look, I've got this package, do you want to buy it?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, what's in it? I say, I haven't got the faintest idea. And they say, how much do you want for it? And I say, $100 million. And then they say, fine, that's it. And that's the market.
And that's our online video picks for this week. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues, whether from the long johns or slightly more serious sources. You know about the credit shortage we're in right now in this country, but much of the world is falling into something much more serious, a widespread food shortage. In the last week, there have been food riots in Haiti, Egypt, and Yemen. A general strike began yesterday in Burkina Faso over food shortages. The Times of London says Asia is bracing for the possibility of rice riots. Now, amazingly, this is getting only modest coverage here in the United States, but most of the world is paying closer attention. For example, this fragment of a BBC online report.
In Haiti, the poorest country in the Western world, people vent their anger on the streets. At least 4 people have been killed in the riots in the last week. Most of the population live on less than $2 a day. And over the last year, the cost of basic food like flour has doubled. The protesters are demanding the government either helps them or stands down.
It's absurd. The government cannot provide the population with food, which is a basic necessity, or anything else. So if they cannot provide its citizens with the basic necessities, they should resign.
Across the world, on another continent, similar scenes are being played out. Egyptian police fire tear gas to try to disperse crowds after 2 days of demonstrations. The anger here at low wages and rising food prices is such that people ignore laws against holding protests like this. Almost 200 have been arrested since Monday and scores injured. One of the main reasons for the rocketing prices is the United States' devotion to producing biofuels like corn ethanol, a green alternative to petrol.
With me now to talk about the food shortage in Haiti and Egypt and elsewhere, Gary Pierre, editor and publisher of the Haitian Times, based here in New York, and Bettina Lucia from the United Nations World Food Program. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for coming. Gary, tell us more. What's going on in Haiti and why?
Well, this problem that you've seen the last couple of days, this riot or protest, has been percolating for more than 5 months now. I think I was in Haiti a couple months ago in February, where I heard rumblings that there were going to be riots, and because the prices of food, of rice, corn, oil, cooking oil, was going up by 20% at a time. And right now it's about 50% higher than it was 5 months ago. And they were warning, there were signs, there were clear signs that this was going to happen. And I think what really angered people was that the president of Haiti, René Préval, kind of dismissed the whole notion. And in fact, he told them that, well, let me know when you're going to have this riot, this protest, because I'm affected as well. Well, I don't know.
That sounds pretty dismissive.
Well, exactly. It looks as if he was mocking their misery. And so I think that anger is what you're seeing now.
Is that why the demonstrations, I think today or yesterday, went right to the gates of the presidential palace?
Well, certainly. I mean, he's not very popular right now. And one of the reasons is that he hasn't done anything really. Not that he has much choices at his disposal, but his attitude has been totally laissez-faire, blasé, if you will. And so you have anger brewing among the population.
We'll come back to Haiti, but Bettina, give us the big picture, because this similar kind of thing, if not the demonstrations, this kind of 50% inflation or more on the basic staples in poor countries seems to be going on all over the world.
Yeah, and it's really an amazing situation and a really frightening situation. Because what we are facing at the moment is what we call the perfect storm, because several factors are coming together here. You have on one hand a big rise in energy prices. And energy prices are important because so much of the food is being transported. You have a rise in droughts and floods, so that harvests have been destroyed. Australia, for example, is a country that is a big food exporter, and they've had 2 droughts in a row, and therefore haven't produced that much. You have things together where it's really a complicated situation. You have, for example, a success story like India and China, where you have countries that have come that have received real economic growth, but what it means, they also are suddenly interested in importing huge amounts of food, cereals, for example. So the diets are changing. All of these things come together.
Often grain to feed meat-producing animals. I talked to Paul Krugman, the New York Times columnist, about this on the radio, and he had written in his column the phrase, the march of the meat-eating Chinese. In other words, as the Chinese become more prosperous as a group, they're eating more meat, which takes more grain to produce than the grain that would feed a human being. And so there's a grain shortage relatively.
Yeah, and we've seen the lowest food stocks in some 30 years. So all of these things are coming together, and it's really making for a very volatile situation in so many countries. I read somewhere that the MI5, the British intelligence service, says something like, if a person goes 4 meals without food, you will have anarchy. You know, that's a pretty dire scenario, what the English spies are coming up there with.
So, Gary, what are the Haitian people asking the Haitian government to do? How can President Preval or anyone else change the nature of supply and demand for grain in the world?
Well, exactly, hence the dilemma that Preval finds himself in. Haiti does not produce much food anymore. Most of the farmers are actually living in Miami or in New York right now. They've left the country. And so about 70% of Haiti's food is exported into the country.
Is it imported into the country?
Into the country. So he can't lower taxes because this is a free market economy. The only thing he's trying to do is to somehow raise taxes on the rich in Haiti, and that's not really popular. And he's trying to get the civil servant that's making over 30,000 goods, which is roughly $1,000 a month, to give up 20% of their salary. So therefore, he'll be able to take some of that money and help subsidize
a
the
bit
local
of a
economy.
redistribution of wealth.
Yes.
But in a country that already has such a high ratio of poor to middle class or rich.
The other problem, too, that's facing Haiti, that's unique in Haiti, to Haiti right now, is that because the economy in the United States is bad, the Haitian Americans, Haitians overseas, who send a lot of money back home in remittance, have not been able to send as much as they used to. So people who, depending upon that money, don't have as much as they used to. And so they're getting it from both ends. Less money, higher prices.
I've heard, for example, that they're actually sending food down there instead of money like in the old days, because it's better for the people on the ground to get food because they wouldn't be able to afford it.
Really? The remittances, the money transfers that we always hear about from immigrant communities here back home, now they're actually shipping food? You can do that?
Yes, you can. In fact, you just order it here in New York or in Miami, and in Haiti you have delivered done to your house.
Now, another example is Burkina Faso, as I mentioned before, a country in Africa that held a 2-day general strike yesterday and today. From what I gather, it's been peaceful as far as I've heard. But their government is taking some concrete steps, and the people are asking for more concrete steps. That's why the strike. So according to Reuters here, Burkina's government agreed to a 3-month suspension of import duties on staple foods and announced a raft of supplementary measures to help the poor cope with high prices, including extending the import duty suspension to 6 months and increasing the cheaper tranches of electricity and water bills designed to help poor households. But unions, it says, are demanding further price cuts for food and a 25% increase in public sector salaries and pensions. So can the governments around the world do that? You know, I guess not everybody has an economy like ours, which is mostly market determined. The government can say, okay, we're going to cut food prices by 25%.
Well, it's a complicated situation. What we are seeing in many countries depends on whether you're a food importer or an export country. The countries that we are seeing that are most affected by the rise in food prices are the ones that have to import food, that already have been hit by high inflation rates. where many people live on the margins, and of course, you see, especially in Africa, you see those countries. What we have done as an aid organization is we made an urgent appeal a couple of weeks ago to the 20 top donor governments in the world and said, our food prices that we as an aid organization have to pay have gone up by some 55% since last summer. Just to show you, because it's really the same as if you had a budget at home. Last summer we planned for this year. We thought we would need $2.9 billion to feed these roughly 73 million people around the world. And then food prices escalated. And so in February we were already at $3.4 billion. So we're asking governments to really chip in because we need $3.4 billion in total. And by now we've received some 600 million or so for this year. So it's a really tough situation as an aid organization.
Which governments are coming through for you and which ones are not?
I think they are all very appreciative. They all realize that they have to do more. So we are optimistic, but we are really doing anything possible, be it the Brian Lehrer Show or the Oprah Show. We do anything to raise awareness about this because we really have to put pressure on the governments as they step up to the plate.
By the way, we've got the homepage of your website up on our screen. Now, there's this, you could take a look at that. Mm-hmm. This is something regarding a rice program?
Yeah, it's basically, this here is something, and it's an interesting thing because we're looking for different angles to get into the news and to mobilize your everyday citizens. On one side, we're always talking to big governments, but this is something how you at home with your kids, or whether you're an 80-year-old rocket scientist or anybody, can play this vocabulary game. It's called freerice.com, and so you play this game. You go, if you get the correct word, definition for the top word for word days.
Should we click on
then
one?
20 grains of rice are being donated to the World Food Program.
I see. By whom?
By the advertisers, basically. The way it works, and it's a really brilliant idea, it's done by John Breen, who's a computer programmer from Indiana, who wanted to help. So he has nothing to do with us. He's just this guy who's really smart and came up with this brilliant idea. The advertisers are clamoring to get on this website. The money goes to us, and we buy food in developing countries, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Uganda, and feed hungry people with it. So it's a great way, because people are often asking, how can we help? If you don't have $100 million, or like Drew Barrymore just gave us $1 million, and the Ocean's 13 people gave us $500,000, if you don't do this, you can do something like this. And people are donating, because I think, world hunger is an issue that often overwhelms people. They think it's huge, there's nothing I can do. And for something like a cup, you see the red cups on our website, the cups you have here in the studio, if they were red and made out of plastic, we would use them to feed the children in school. And it costs 25 cents a day to feed a child in school and totally change the life of a child. So there are lots of things to do.
So if I can define counsel, then some money will go. So Gary, would you accept this definition? 50 people who work in City Hall who the mayor can usually steamroll.
Sounds like New York City.
Does that work for council for you?
Exactly.
And it's much more complicated. So it's really, you could be like this top-notch, super intelligent person, and you would have a hard time often playing this. It's a really difficult game, depending on whether you are on your vocabulary level.
Are these really riots in Haiti, as the media keeps calling them, or are they more just demonstrations?
Well, I think they're violent demonstrations. I mean, to use the term, riot is really...
there is violence.
Yeah, there is violence. Here, 5 people died over the last week or so during these disturbances. But Haiti always attracts this really strong word when things are out of control. So.
But the thing is also, Haiti is the poorest country here in the Western Hemisphere.
Oh, Haitians cringe when they hear that. But
yeah, and I'm sorry that I put that in.
Well, it is, but it's been cliched a bit. And I think they always feel that the fact that the remittance money is not brought into the mix skewed the reality somewhat. So
middle-class Haitians living here are sending home money, but that doesn't get counted into the... Yeah, I guess by some reckonings it does. This is a problem of cities, right? Wasn't it your program that has issued a report that says Global poverty used to be a rural phenomenon primarily. Now it's an urban phenomenon.
Well, that's the problem that we are seeing in places like Haiti and other places around the world. It's really a new phase of hunger, because as an aid organization, we mainly often dealt just with rural poor. And what we are seeing now is that people are totally priced out of the market. I mean, look at this. In the US, for example, families spend about 15% of their income on food. In the developing world, it's often 50% or even 80% that they spend on food. If now suddenly food prices go up like crazy, double in many cases, Bangladesh, for example, rice prices have gone up by 100%, you suddenly have a totally new group of people who cannot afford anything anymore.
By the way, I hear that your own employees, UN World Food Program employees in Jordan, feel so affected by this that they're asking the UN for an emergency pay increase. Is that right?
I haven't heard that.
I saw that in one media report.
I haven't heard that.
I don't know if that's true.
I haven't heard that. But for example, on Haiti, what we've done is we made an emergency appeal on Monday because, you know, we're trying to feed some 1.7 million people there this year, and we've received 13% of the funds that we needed. You know, we're going out to the world and saying, let's help. You have to do something here so that we can help that these riots are not happening.
This is perhaps the most important story in the world today. We've been speaking about it with Bettina Lucia from the UN World Food Program and Garrett Pierre from the Haitian Times. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for having me.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Now, the Internet has created a new way of doing business. But what does it mean when a company has a business plan designed to give its product away? Wired magazine editor Chris Anderson begins our discussion with this video.
The fact that the most successful company in the technology world today, Google, offers everything they do for free is, on the face of it, really kind of astounding. They offer services, software, information, content, all of it's for free. Everything Yahoo does is for free. These are huge, profitable companies that make billions of dollars, and yet they do so. Their entire business model is built around giving things away free to the consumer. All the feedstocks to the digital economy are getting cheaper. All the lines are going down. Now, they never quite hit zero, but they get so close to zero. The question is, at what point can you take them from cheap to free? Now, the difference between 1 penny and free is the difference between having to make a conscious decision to purchase a product and to just do it. But what about the economy that's in Wikipedia? What about the economy that's in Craigslist? What about that stuff where there is no advertising? No money changes hands anywhere in those economies. Or are they economies at all? This is what we call the gift economy. And the gift economy was considered, you know, a kind of a fictional, a fantasy thing that only existed in Burning Man in Berkeley. There's no advertising involved. There's no hidden cross-subsidy. There's no hidden transfer of wealth. It is entirely free labor, consumed, you know, with no expectation of payment or monetary exchange. So I think that between open source and the blogosphere and social networking, user-generated content, and Wikipedia, we are seeing the creation of a gift economy which is on massive scale and really doesn't exist in conventional economics at all. Every industry that becomes digital eventually becomes free.
Wired magazine editor-in-chief Chris Anderson. Now, free always sounds like the right price, but our next guest has a bone to pick with the internet economics of giving things away. He is Hank Williams, a programmer and internet entrepreneur who writes the blog called WhyDoesEverythingSuck.com. Hi, Hank. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Later, I'll ask you why you named your website that, but first I'll ask you, what's wrong with getting stuff for free?
Well, it seems really good for the end user, I mean, for consumers. The problem is that it's not very good for the economy. If everything, right now, you know, there's a lot of things shifting from advertising on, let's say, newspapers to the internet, and that's not so horrible, but when there are products that are potentially being killed, or
what's a product that's being killed because of the internet economics?
Well, I don't. Chris, for example, is suggesting that everything will be free. I don't know that it's happened yet, but you know, this is what he proposes that we look forward to, the idea that, for example, software become free. For example, imagine, wouldn't it be great if Microsoft Word were free and they just monetized it with advertising? Well, maybe not so much. Maybe if all of our software products that generate substantial revenue were free, that would reduce the amount of revenue, and just in general would reduce the amount of revenue that companies that pay salaries and employ people would generate. Right now, 20% of our economy is intellectual property, and 40% of our exports are intellectual property. So if that went away or substantially shrunk, we'd be transferring an enormous amount of wealth to third world.
But maybe that's the global division of labor just for the modern information economy. In the industrialized world, well, we were pretty much, I mean, in the industrialized era, we were, you know, the leaders of the industrialized world. We had all these factories and stuff, and the lower paying jobs, agriculture and so forth, were in the developing world. Now, the top of the ladder is the information economy. Industrial jobs are being exported, and so maybe it's just kind of where things are at right now, but the United States, if that's our main concern, is still at the top of the food chain.
Well, that's the way it is right now, and part of the question is if such a huge percentage of our economy is intellectual property, and all of a sudden that's all free, then that means that part of our economy, I mean, and this is in an extreme case, right, that means that part of our economy goes away. I mean, that it's unimaginable what that would mean.
Is it starting to happen in any sector that you see?
There are, to a certain extent, I mean, right now we have email programs, for example, that are free. We use Gmail, we use Hotmail, and years ago people would sell those programs. I think it's, for the most part, it's not happening yet. I mean, newspapers obviously are being damaged by the internet, but I don't think that's the same thing, because those products were very cheap or free. In any case, I'm more concerned.
Musicians, one could argue, I think this is a controversial proposition, but if CD sales are down, which they are dramatically, and internet downloads of music, paid downloads of music, aren't making up the difference, then maybe it's just hard to make a living as a musician.
Well, I mean, the music is a huge issue. That's sort of a separate but very important aspect of free. The problem with music is not an economic issue. It's really a moral issue. We're stealing the music. There's no economic force or competitive force that's making music cheaper. What's making music what's driving? Wouldn't even say we're really driving the cost down. We're just driving the sales down by stealing it.
You write on your website. Oh, and let me ask you this: you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
You were around when more traditional economics, those rules applied. How are you adapting what you do for the internet economy, or are you?
Well, we're developing. I would not say that there are no product categories where you can be successful today. When I write about this, I'm writing more about the broader trends. Specifically for us, we're developing products that we do believe people will pay for, services aimed at developers who obviously have to pay if they want to offer their services. So there are categories that are that work. Things like Salesforce.com or contact management, customer relationship management. Those are all categories that have been successful.
In the most recent episode of South Park, did you see it? Someone tells the boys that they need to raise some money. They suggest that the best way to go about it is the internet. And after creating a viral video, they succeed in creating a video that goes viral. The kids from South Park show up to collect their internet revenue dollars. Let's watch what happens.
Hi, we made a really successful thing on the internet, and we'd like to collect our money.
Take a number and wait with everyone else.
Ma'am, perhaps you don't recognize the internet sensation Little Gay Kid from YouTube?
Take a number and wait with everyone else.
Chocolate red.
Ah!
Hey, I know you. You're the what in my asshole kid.
What in the butt, sir? It's Tron Guy. I saw him on YouTube.
Yeah, sure. All the biggest internet stars are here. You remember, of course, Numa Numa. And the Star Wars kid. And the internet sensation, Cute Sneezing Panda. And there's Dramatic Look Gopher.
Wow, I've seen all you guys on the internet. Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with. Me too. Yeah, but you know, I learned something today. We thought we could make money on the internet, but while the internet is new and exciting for creative people, it hasn't matured as a distribution mechanism to the extent that one should trade real and immediate opportunities for income for the promise of future online revenue. It will be a few years before digital distribution of media on the internet can be monetized to an extent that necessitates content producers to forego their fair value in more traditional media. Yeah.
Yeah. We all learned a valuable lesson here, right? Now, Hank, I know you have a response to that, but you know, I missed online that cute panda video that they were referring to. Let me see if I can call that up. I've really got to see that. Is that here? Can I get it? All right, let's see. Panda video that they were referring to. Let me see if I can call that up. I've really got to see that. Is that here? Can I get it? All right, let's see. There it is. A panda can sneeze. Okay. So you didn't see that South Park episode before now, right?
No, I didn't. But I mean, certainly Kyle's right that we haven't figured out how to monetize everything on the internet. But I don't think that. But I do believe that there is an answer. I do believe that we are going to be able to figure out how to monetize things. I think one of my primary concerns is that we just get comfortable with the idea of paying for things. That there is a psychology which is set in on the internet, which is that it's not appropriate to pay. There's something wrong, almost ethically wrong. I mean, the people that are the sort of free music people are annoyed with the idea that the music companies should actually try to get paid, or artists should try to get paid.
But that's part of the dream of the internet, right? And according to Chris Anderson in his Wired article, quote, there are dozens of ways that media companies make money around free content, from selling information about consumers to brand licensing, not that we like that, value-added subscriptions, meaning you can get special content for free, for pay, even though you can get most of the content for free, and direct commerce. See How to Wiki for a complete list. Now an entire ecosystem of web companies is growing up around this set of models.
Well, first of all, there's absolutely no one has demonstrated that we can replace music sales with any of these sort of ancillary revenue streams. There's just no evidence of that. But even more importantly, the idea that we should have to replace real current revenue streams with these ancillary revenue streams because too many people are stealing the content is really, I think, a problem with our society right now. We've got to figure out what's going on because we are developing this idea that intellectual property, and it's starting with music, but it's movies, there are these ideas about patents being wrong and all intellectual property being valueless.
I wonder how you feel about the New York Times, for example. They made people pay for a while in order to get access to their most popular items, like their columnists, Maureen Dowd, Paul Krugman, Thomas Friedman, all those people. Right? You had to join something called Time Select. They gave that up. Rupert Murdoch now owns the Wall Street Journal, as you know, and I gather that the Journal, where you now have to pay to see most of their content online, is going to give up most of those barriers. Most of the people I know who are aware of this are cheering. Are you not?
Well, actually, as I understand it, Rupert Murdoch has made the decision that he's not going to tear down the paywall entirely, that he may make a few more things free, but he's going to keep it up. And I think that was, I'm not against free. I'm only against free if it's the right business decision. That's great. But
I mean, it obviously didn't work for the Times to put up walls to their most popular columnists, right?
Yeah, it didn't. It seems to have not worked. I mean, I'm not inside their numbers enough to know whether it really did or didn't work. Or
I mean, I assume
right
they
decisions.
wouldn't end it if it had worked.
But presumably so. But it's working at the Wall Street Journal, and that's the right decision. But I just want to be clear. I'm not against free. I'm simply against free when we're either forced to do it because there's theft, or in the case of Google, or one of the things I talk a lot about is the venture capital community pouring tons of money into a lot of companies that don't really make sense, and we're creating this concept I call artificial abundance. It's this notion that there's just so much of everything. Right now there are dozens of video companies, and none of them are making money. YouTube made money selling out to Google, and that's it.
What was that phrase? What abundance?
Artificial abundance.
Otherwise known as the second tech bubble?
That's an interesting way to frame it, and that might be actually what drives it. I never really thought of framing it quite that way, but that makes sense.
We will see. I am told that Chris Anderson, knowing that you are coming on to respond to his video tonight, wants to come on in a future week, so we will continue this conversation. Hank, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up in a minute, spring break isn't just Fort Lauderdale and wet T-shirt contests anymore. You'll see why. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
先生你好，歡迎光臨，等等先。唔該晒。Brandon.
Watch Canapé, the French cultural magazine show, Thursdays on CUNY TV.
Mama was queen of the mambo, Papa was king of the Congo. Deep down in the jungle, I start banging my first bongo. Every monkey like to be in my place instead of me, 'cause I'm the king of bongo, baby, I'm the king of bongo bong. I went to the big town where there is a lot of sound, from the jungle to the city looking for a bigger crown. So I play my boogie for the people of big city, but they don't go crazy when I'm banging on my boogie. I'm the king of the bongo, king of the bongo bong. Hear me when I come, baby. King of the bongo, king of the bongo bong. Nobody like to be in my place instead of me, 'cause nobody go crazy when I'm banging on my boogie. I'm a king without a crown, hanging loose in a big town, but I'm a king of bongo, baby, I'm the king of bongo bong.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. As many students are returning from your spring breaks and re-engaging in school, we hope, we thought we would take a look at some of the more altruistic ways that students found to spend their week off. We are joined now by NYU Alternative Spring Break Board Chair Gwen Neely and her husband, as it turns out, Loyola Prep School Service Program Director James Neely. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Now, wait a minute. There is such a thing as the NYU Alternative Spring Break Board?
Yes.
What is that?
There's a group of college students who have come together to basically do all of the logistics and organize the program around all of the breaks that happen during the school year. So we actually have winter and spring breaks, and we do everything from deciding where we're going to go to training our site leaders and selecting them, doing recruiting for the participants, and then doing training and educational opportunities for them throughout the year.
What was a hot example this spring break?
We went to the Monte Cristi in the Dominican Republic, actually, and the students worked at an orphanage. They worked with orphanage outreach and were absolutely very affected by their work. They loved working with the children and learned quite a bit while they were there.
That's great. And at least it was warm in the Dominican Republic, so
Absolutely.
They probably got to play a little bit too, right?
So not too far from the normal spring break in certain terms.
And Jim, you just got back from an alternative spring break adventure?
Yes, we had 2 weeks for spring break, and for the first week I was in Camden, New Jersey with my students, staying at the Romero Center and working at various homeless shelters, nursing homes, an AIDS hospice, all in Camden or in Philadelphia.
That's the difference between public school and private school. You get 2 weeks for spring break in the private schools. The school year ends around June 3rd.
It's a nice feature of the calendar. Yeah.
Oh, and you pay $30,000, I forgot.
Yeah.
So is this a big thing at Loyola Prep?
It is. I've been there for 7 years, and the first trip Gwen actually went on with us. We went down to Mississippi to do a habitat project, which was a great experience. We had about 15 students, and it's grown progressively. We do 6 service trips over the course of the year. Some are long weekends, others are week-long. We do an international trip. We get about 50% of the entire student body participating.
That's great. Now let's take a look at how one college program is targeting students for this.
What did you do for spring break?
I got drunk. Picked up some beer by drinking. A lot of hot girls there. Did a little strip tease for them. MTV was down there. Free open bar. Started drinking. Got drunk. We're all passed out. We got wasted. Wasted.
We're not going to stay here much longer, folks, because of the Katrina came ashore here. Out to the Gulf.
What did you do for spring break?
Went down to Mississippi to help out Katrina victims.
We were rebuilding houses. There's so many people that just need to see compassion.
The devastation that was still down there, and it's ridiculous.
You're there, you're seeing it, touching it, feeling it. Alternative spring break changed my life.
It was a great experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
It will be the most amazing week of your life.
Spring break lasts a week. Alternative spring break will last a lifetime.
Be the change you wish to see in the world.
That's nice.
Yeah. Nice video, a great Gandhi quote, very current in New York with the Opera Satyagraha showing right now. Everybody's walking around at the Metropolitan Opera saying, be the change you want to see in the world. So a very current phrase. But how does a video like that or programs like yours compete with, the idea of a free open bar on the beach in Fort Lauderdale?
I think for quite a few students that may be attractive for a year or two. But it does get old. I mean, I think the college scene in general is often full of drinking. And so I do think students look for alternatives. And several students look for alternative ways to create community in their schools. And this happens to be a wonderful way for students to be able to do that.
We're looking at your Facebook site here now. This is the Alternative Break site, NYU Office of Student Affairs. Tell us what people would see here.
Basically, they could, it's really just it's brand new this year. We just started it. We have all of the officers on the board on there, a brief description of who we are, what we do, and then all of our events will be sent out through here. So if we're doing a fundraiser or, we recently had our end of the year event, that was all given out through this, as well as our contact information for when students can, or how they can go online and apply.
So Facebook status, building homes with Habitat for Humanity in southern Mississippi. Aren't I a good person?
It's a little bit more complicated than that. I think that there's a tendency, especially with some of my students' parents, to think that the service trips are going to be this magical cure for teenage issues, and they're not. The students come back and they still deal with some of the same habits that they may have had, and it's also, there's a real chance that when you do a service trip, that if it's not done properly, it can in some ways reinforce negative stereotypes on poverty and the people that we're going out to serve.
Now here's an example of a place where you were last summer. Is this yours, Gwen?
No, this is actually...
Actually, this is both of us.
Both of you?
Yeah.
Okay, Jim,
through James's experience, we found out about it at NYU and decided that we would do a trip there as well.
Yeah, the Romero Center is a student dormitory that is attached to a church in Camden, New Jersey. I think Camden is still the poorest city in the United States.
Certainly the most violent.
And we go down a couple times a year, and students will work at different placements. And in the afternoon and evenings, the staff of the Romero Center facilitate reflections. Sometimes those reflections are oriented towards poverty in Camden. Sometimes we have the people who run the placements that students go to come in and speak. But there's a real commitment to talking about what's going on, getting the students to think about why they came down rather than just coming down.
Here's another promotional video for an alternative spring break, this one more political.
What's up, Ariel?
Hey, Thomas.
So, what are you up to for spring break?
I'm getting so trashed every night that week.
Sounds fun.
What are you doing?
I can't decide between combating climate change on the beaches of Santa Barbara, California, exploring the nation's capital after working to end the war in Iraq, or enjoying the South by Southwest Music Festival after fighting the death penalty in Texas. It's all part of the Alternative Spring Breaks brought to you by Campus Progress.
How can you afford that?
There are travel stipends available, but you have to register early.
Wow, that sounds a lot better than what I had in mind.
For more information, visit www.springbreakalternative.org.
We'll forgive that guy being a Phillies fan for tonight. But Jim, do you make a distinction in these programs between ones that are more political like that and ones that are more apolitical?
I think certainly at the high school level, it's important to emphasize direct contact with the people who are facing these issues. I have a lot of students who come into high school with a desire to be opinionated, but not necessarily experienced. And so that's really something that we try and build a sensitivity to the people they're working with. One of the things that both of our programs emphasize is learning the names of the people that you serve, giving the people that you serve your name so that there's a personal relationship that builds the opinions.
Right. I mean, in terms of also what you were saying earlier, I think volunteerism is growing for students, and they're really interested in social issues. What we focus on at NYU and through Breakaway is more making sure that they're learning about the root causes and that they come back and become active citizens. I mean, that really is the key that we're looking for, that it's not just this week, that they really are getting some information about the communities and the issues that those communities are facing where they will serve, and then coming back and doing more once they're home.
And do you follow up with your students enough to know, do you have enough experience with this, to have a sense if they are becoming active citizens? Because the generational split, as I observe it and understand it, is that, you know, baby boomers, this is an overgeneralization, but baby boomers thought they could get involved in politics and the political sector would change the world. Today's college students are very disillusioned with the political sector, may not even vote, but are volunteering in higher numbers than the previous generations.
You know, there's actually a study that recently came out from one of the universities that's a member of Breakaway, and that's our national organization that helps give us some support. And they said that students actually vote more after being on these trips.
Well, that kind of makes sense. Can you tell me a story of an individual who got changed by this experience?
Myself, but beyond me.
You can tell your story.
I went on my very first spring break at Boston College, and I was in North Carolina and loved it. And on that trip, there was a junior whose roommate was abroad in Ecuador, and I had planned on going to Amsterdam to go, and it had a psychology program. And through my talk with him and my experience there, I wanted something more profound, something that could potentially change me, something that, not that the typical going abroad to Europe or Western Europe or whatnot doesn't do that for people, but I wanted somewhere where I could volunteer, where I could get an insight into poverty and social issues, and so I decided to go to Ecuador, and I think a large part of that was based on that. And that's just sort of continued for me. We spent the summer in Afghanistan, and most of my work has been with nonprofits and in the international sector.
You looked at him when you said Boston College. Were you college sweethearts at BC?
The last week of our college career, yes.
It's a long story.
That's pretty good, because most of the people I know who are couples in senior year of college broke up at the end, to the great shock of one or the other.
Right.
Now, what did you do in Afghanistan this summer?
I was working with the Afghan Rule of Law Project, and I was teaching human rights and legal ethics to Sharia law students and professors in Kabul, but the students were from Jalalabad, which is closer to the Pakistan border.
How hard was that?
I think it was beautiful but difficult. It was a real opportunity to have an exchange of ideas. And I was going as a law student, but the Sharia law professors and students found out that I teach at a Catholic school. And very quickly, every day they would want to sort of talk about the differences between our two religions. But it was just an extraordinary experience. The hospitality of the Afghan people is really extraordinary, and the amount of respect that they offer to us because we were there was also really extraordinary.
What would you say you got from them and they got from you?
I mean, what I got from them was an appreciation for how much dialogue is needed between the American and Christian world and the Middle Eastern and Islamic world. There was so many misconceptions that I had, and I thought of myself as someone who watched the news and read all the papers and knew what was going on over there. But the reality was so much more. And what I hope, I've been emailing back and forth with them since I've been back, and what I hope I gave to them was appreciation that there's someone who respects Islam as a Christian, and someone who wants to be in dialogue with them and understands the frustrations that they feel.
Any disaster stories? I don't know, you know, white privileged kids who went to Afghanistan or Camden and just didn't get it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it definitely happens that where they, you know, they are privileged, they come back and they feel even more privileged. And then I think sometimes these experiences are very profound for all of us. I mean, I know even when I go back to Camden, I'm profoundly affected by the people that I meet and the stories that I hear and the work that I do. And I think it's hard to sometimes negotiate with yourself this dichotomy of caring about the poor and wearing Prada glasses and, you know, the consumer lifestyles that we live or the career paths that we want to follow. So I do think that it's easier for people to just cut that off and stop being active citizens and just go about, you know, a very non-conscientious life.
And I think there's a lot of people who are listening would want to hear that there's a sensitivity towards justice issues here in New York. And that one of the things I really try and emphasize with my students is that, yeah, we do go away and we do service, but that's to empower and inform us so that we can do better service here in our community as well.
So are there places that you just don't go because you know from experience not to?
As far as different
taking
locations?
Students, yeah.
I mean, I would say not specifically, more we've had a not so great experience of work or something like that, but it hasn't been a general across the board.
But you were going to say something about his New York point? Oh, I thought you were.
No, I don't think. I was probably thinking of a couple other things. But
all right. We have 20 seconds left. Have either of you been at this long enough to know if it changed after 9/11?
From what I understand, volunteering in general changed quite a bit, especially students who were in high schools and colleges. They've seen an enormous growth in their participation in volunteering across the U.S. So, and I know our numbers grow 10 to 15% every year. So.
I noticed right away parents were worried about sending kids abroad, but there was a real interest and curiosity with students that wasn't there before.
Jim from Loyola Prep, Gwen from NYU, thank you very much. Keep it up.
Thank you.
And that's it for tonight's show. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30. You can sign up for our free podcast at CUNY.TV. Next week, high-tech spring cleaning. And please tune in to my daily radio show, The Brian Lehrer Show, weekday mornings at 10 on WNYC Radio. Tomorrow morning, how to take a nap at work. That's at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning on 93.9 FM and AM 820 WNYC. Have a great night.